Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Laura and this is Culturing Nonsense. If you are new here, please make sure to subscribe if you find the content interesting or like the video if you like it. Today we're going to dive into more coverage of Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos trial. This is going to be covering last week, which was week 8 of testimony, the week of October 24th. Now, if you like this video and it's the first one of mine you've seen, I'm going to link up a playlist here of different videos that I've done covering the trial from the beginning if you'd like to go back and catch up. But this is going to be a little bit of a short video because there was only one day of actual testimony this past week on Tuesday the 26th. And that is because on Wednesday morning at about 8:30 a.m., a water main broke, and so court was shut down for the rest of the week. It has since resumed this week, so next Tuesday I'll have another update video for you guys about what's going on for the rest of this week. However, today we're just going to be talking a little bit more about investors in Theranos. So one person who was pretty important who testified on the 26th was Lisa Peterson, and she was partially in charge of the investment from the DeVos family in Theranos. So if you remember from my last video the week previously, we heard from Brian Tolbert, who was another investor. And interestingly enough, he had recorded some investment calls that Elizabeth Holmes had made with his company. So it was the first time that jurors were able to hear her voice. And later during this day, the 26th, there were some clips from Mad Money and I believe a couple other interviews played. So it was kind of the first time that jurors actually got to hear from Elizabeth Holmes herself, which I think is pretty important. Okay, so like I said, Lisa Peterson is the person who is testifying on Tuesday, and she was involved with the DeVos family. And if that name sounds familiar, maybe it's because you know of Betsy DeVos, who was the education secretary in the Trump White House, or you know about the DeVos family because they made their money from Amway, basically the biggest, baddest granddaddy MLM. So, you know, for me personally, if there were one family that had to lose out on some money on Theranos besides, I don't know, maybe the Sacklers, I'd probably choose the DeVosses because they're now billionaires and I'm very anti-MLM. So if you know the way they made their money, I think it's highly unethical. So in her testimony, Lisa Peterson basically describes how the decision was made to invest that $100 million in Theranos, what made her think that the company was reputable, the due diligence that she did in order to make that investment, and basically how she found out that Theranos, wasn't all it was cracked up to be. So Ms. Peterson's boss, Jerry Tabergen, was actually the person who was in charge of making this investment go through, but Ms. Peterson was the one who managed it. And she actually volunteered for this because she had an interest in healthcare. I believe it was maybe her husband who was diabetic, so she was kind of personally interested in the type of benefit that something like Theranos could bring, with blood pricking and being able to do multiple tests with just a little finger stick of blood. So Ms. Peterson said that she participated in a call with Ms. Holmes and received 2 very large binders of information sent by Theranos, and this helped her prepare her colleagues for a meeting with Ms. Holmes in Palo Alto, California. So she said that she had the impression that this was going to be a game changer for healthcare. So something that was really interesting about this invitation to invest that the DeVos family got was that they felt like they were kind of being handpicked as potential investors for Theranos. We've talked about some other investors in the past, like Rupert Murdoch, several other independent investors, and this was something that Theranos did. They didn't actually have very large venture capital firms invest in them. They kind of picked independent families a lot of the time to do some of their investing. And a potential reason for this could be that larger firms typically do have a more strict, due diligence process where they're going to look at who they're going to invest in. And the process for, a family investing might not be the same. So one thing that was presented to the jury was a memo that states Theranos' goal was to find investors with less emphasis on liquidity and more emphasis on long-term capital appreciation. She was handpicking 5 to 6 private families to invest in her company, and she was inviting us to participate in this opportunity. Peterson says Holmes didn't want large private investment firms or institutions because they wanted Theranos to go public and she wanted to stay private. So I guess after spending 4 or 5 hours talking to Elizabeth Holmes and Mr. Balwani, Ms. Peterson said that she caucused in the parking lot with her boss and the DeVos family, and they planned to, give their $100 million investment. Ms. Peterson spoke about the claims from Theranos that appealed to her, including the fact that Theranos devices were being used in, military helicopters and in clinical trials with pharmaceutical companies. And apparently, when they asked Ms. Holmes about any potential risks that lay ahead for Theranos, Ms. Peterson said that they were told it would be executing the rollout of Theranos blood centers in Walgreens that might be a problem. She never told that it was the technology itself that would be the problem. Another thing that we see here, again, these families that invested believed that all of the testing would be done on Theranos machines instead of third-party machines. And U.S. Attorney Robert Leach asked Ms. Peterson if Ms. Holmes ever mentioned that the majority of the company's testing was done on third-party machines. And Ms. Peterson replied no. And she was asked, would that have mattered to you? And she said yes. Of course, if you're going to invest in something, you'd expect them to be running the tests on their own proprietary machines. Again, if you guys remember that doctored Pfizer report that I talked about in the last video, that was presented here as something that was given to investors like Ms. Peterson and was one of the pieces that made her feel more comfortable investing in Theranos because she believed that this validation report was from Pfizer because it had the Pfizer logo on it. However, it's pretty clear that this was doctored because in testimony from Dr. Weber, we learned that Pfizer never validated Theranos, so there's no way they could have had a validated report from Pfizer. They just, put the Pfizer logo on it, and this is clearly fraudulent. So this is really one of those big, huge moments because as much as you might be able to explain away exaggerations or wishful thinking on the part of Elizabeth Holmes, a doctored report is a doctored report, and you can't really explain your way out of that. It's just fraudulent. It's defrauding investors when you present them with information that is not accurate about what they might be investing in. So because it was kind of this air of exclusivity in terms of who was going to be an investor in Theranos, Ms. Peterson testified to the fact that there was kind of a lot of FOMO going on. The DeVos family was afraid that if they didn't jump on this opportunity, they were going to miss out with Theranos. So it is true that they could have done more due diligence, and this point was really hammered home by the defense. During cross-examination, they asked over and over again if Ms. Peterson looked into this, found out that piece of information, looked at this website, figured out, X, Y, Z. There were a couple pieces of the puzzle that if she had really done, hundreds of hours of due diligence, she might have been able to catch on to the fact that things at Theranos weren't exactly as they were reporting them. However, because of this, feeling of FOMO, scarcity, whatever you want to call it, urgency, the family thought that if they didn't invest at this point, if they kind of pushed back against the things Elizabeth was saying to them, they would miss out on this big investment opportunity. They believed the things Elizabeth was telling them. They believed the information that they were presented in the binders. And yes, at the end of the day, they could have done more due diligence work, but that's not really the issue here. And interestingly enough, the judge kind of took issue with some of the questioning in the cross-examination. After that part was over, he kind of talked to the defense attorney and told them that they were not going to be allowed to kind of bring this back up in their closing arguments. And that's kind of a big blow to the defense because when you prepare your trial, each piece that you do along the way is going to kind of build a bigger picture in your closing argument. So if they're not going to be able to touch the investor piece at all, it might kind of mess up the end point that they were hoping to make. But it's a really interesting fine line that they've been walking because yes, more due diligence could have been done, but at the end of the day, that's not the issue here. Their argument is kind of like, okay, maybe Elizabeth Holmes lied, but it's really your fault because you didn't do the work to figure out that she was lying to you. And that's not a legal argument. It's more of an argument to sway the jury, maybe, to make them think that the investors should have done more to protect themselves, been more intelligent, basically figured out the lies. But the judge seems to think that this line of argumentation is a little bit too victim blamey. So, like I said, he's not letting the defense bring it up again in their closing arguments. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about today is a couple video clips of Elizabeth Holmes that the jury got to see. And like I said, this is the first time that they've really, seen her and heard her speak, seen her without a mask, heard, reports about Theranos from her own voice. And the first clip was from Mad Money, and it's been something that's been shown a lot. And I'll quote her. I guess I'll try out my deep Elizabeth Holmes voice for you all. This is kind of an infamous clip where she's asked about what's going on at Theranos and kind of rebutting the claims. And she says, this is what happens when you try to change things. First, they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then you change the world. That was really bad. I'm sorry. I feel like I can do a better one when I'm not under pressure. Then there was a second clip from the Today Show from April of 2016 where she was defending Theranos' technology. And she said that she was devastated that we did not catch and fix these issues faster. And then she said, I'm the founder and CEO of this company. Anything that happens in this company is my responsibility at the end of the day. That's a pretty damning line and goes directly against what the defense is trying to claim. They're trying to say that it's not her fault what happened in this company because she was up at the top and not really looking at the granular details where all this fraud took place. However, now we have the words from her own mouth that anything that happened here is her fault. And that is the reason why on this day testimony was delayed by an hour in the morning, because the defense was trying to make sure that this tape was not played in court because they know that it is not good for them. So that's going to do it for today. Like I said, it was really only one day of testimony, but I think it was pretty interesting. So I'll be back again next Tuesday with another update. And until then, like I said, subscribe if you haven't, if you want to keep watching these updates, like this video if you like it, and feel free to leave a comment down below if you have any questions, suggestions, anything like that. So see you in my next video. Hope you all have a good day. Bye.